Should we start with you, Jordan?
Alright, sure, dude. Alright, so welcome back to Drawing Table, where we will have chill and casual conversations about art, and of course, about creating it as well. We are your hosts, Jourdan Tuffan.
And Ken Darmadi. We invited you all last week to join us on a design jam where we tackle a mock brief design together. Our brief last week was to create a set of prop designs for a new game called Beast Hunter by the famous Japanese company Hatcom. The props will be used by a tribe of beast hunters to hunt down a creature that was voted by all of you on the audience, which was the speedy burning turtle. And while we planned on making this episode a feedback session, we will be going through our time lapse of our final designs instead, and just show you guys how we tackle a brief, and just showing you guys our workflow from start to finish.
And always, we will be finishing up the podcast with a Q&A session and an artwork of the week showcase. So stay tuned for that. And I think it would be a good idea for you to start off with your time lapse this time, Ken, since it was me that went first.
All right. Yeah.
Before.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Okay.
I don't think we need to solo the stream this time.
Yeah, let's not solo it.
Yeah, otherwise we're gonna get that really weird
That bug.
glitch and bug on the screen.
Okay, I'll start. So last week, I started with. Actually, maybe it's better if I pull out where I stopped last week.
Yeah,
Give me a
actually
sec.
pull up your mind map and also your reference sheets, because there might be some people that missed the stream last week.
Yeah, let's do that first.
And speaking of people that missed the stream last week, Karta is in the chat today, so it's good to see him here. Hey boy.
It's good to see you, Carta. You missed our episodes, 2 or 3 times?
Not good enough, man. You gotta attend these streams more often, dude.
Okay, anyway, so the mind map, I started with this. I started by taking properties that I could think of from the speedy burning turtle and then expanding the keywords into something that's more manageable, and I guess that sparks inspiration to me. And then from that point, I started collecting references.
Oh, Ken,
And
your VLC is actually still on top of your Photoshop,
oh, that's so weird.
so it's covering it all.
I'll just close VLC.
Yeah.
Keyshot Blender. Okay, should be good now.
All right.
Yeah, with the mind map.
There
Let
we
me show
go.
that again. Thanks for noticing.
I was wondering why your
yeah.
screen was static.
But yeah, so I started with speedy burning turtle, taking keywords out of it, and then just getting inspirations of what kind of props that I can make for the hunters. And then next, I started gathering references, and I looked at a turtle's natural predator, which is a shark, or more specifically, a tiger shark. And I was also looking at traps, maybe like breathing apparatus, some kind of texturing inspirations and patterns. And also, of course, I researched just a bit more after the stream, just to make sure that I get more references for the technical stuff, like the mechanisms of the spear gun or harpoon gun.
Those are some really cool references, I think.
Yeah, I think these are mounted on a boat or ship, and this is just a concept from Dishonored, which I really love and really want to base the design of that world, but I think it kind of deviates in the end. And then these are the sketches, the initial sketches that I came up with last week, and I picked 4 because I really liked how it looks. It looks like a shark, but not too fantasy like the 5th design option. So it still has, like, I can still imagine it being quite, what do you call it, industrial in a way, like if I design the parts right.
And if I recall correctly, you wanted your design options to be a little bit more grounded, right?
Yeah, hopefully I get halfway there, because I think it's actually quite challenging for me because designing guns is not really what I usually do. So I realized that I need a lot of studies on guns and how they work, just to add believable details. And then from that point, this is where we stopped last week. And then let's go back to the time lapse. Give me 1 second.
Hey Barithor, good to have you in the stream today. And
Hello.
no worries, you're not too late. We just started a few minutes ago actually. And Ken's just about to start his time lapse.
Yep.
So
Okay.
you're just in time for the best part of the stream.
Second best, first best, I don't know.
No need to be so humble, Ken.
I have no response for that. Like if I say anything, then I'll be not humble. It's kind of like a catch-22. But anyways, so after I stopped last week, I made more refined sketches of the design. So I took the option number 4 and then made it just a bit more believable by adding more mechanisms and industrial details to it. And I was thinking about maybe this could be like a grenade launcher. So it holds multiple harpoons instead of just one, like typical
really
spear
cool,
guns, right?
actually. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, because I thought that the turtle itself is really fast. So one way that they could anticipate its movement is by shooting multiple times instead of just once and then missing, and then they have to reload. So it's better if they just load 4 harpoons at once and then shoot them in rapid successions.
Yeah, and if you think about it as a player that's using the gun, you would actually find it more visually appealing to see the barrels kind of or the chamber kind of rolling around rather than
Definitely.
just a simple harpoon, just a singular harpoon that's coming out.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking of this more as like a first-person game. So the design of the gun in first person also needs to be interesting with maybe like different mechanics or animations that can be used as a visual interest. So it's not just a static gun. So the barrel is a good example, like Jourdan mentioned, for the players to have some sort of interest in the gun itself. So shooting the gun feels satisfying instead of like it just being static.
Is that something that you also usually keep in mind when you're designing for, let's just say, a client, is thinking about the bigger context of how the concept will be used as well?
Definitely. I think actually that's one of the things that I started, like when a client approached me, that's one of the things that I start asking them, like the technical requirements for the concepts, like what do they need it for, like what kind of platform is it for, is it mobile, and then maybe the target audience, things like that. I think it's also very important because the concept can, like even just a target audience, a different target audience can mean a different approach to the design itself, right? So
right,
it's really important to ask stuff like that.
So who are you imagining your target audience to be for this game then?
Somewhat more mature. So people who might enjoy like Dishonored or maybe Far Cry, people like that. Like that kind of maybe more teenage to adult, young adult maybe.
Right.
But yeah, from the initial sketch, I just made a lot more options. Well, not a lot, like 5 more, just to be sure. Like I got the right designs, and I was also exploring a bit more different types of silhouettes and maybe different kind of mechanisms, like maybe just trying different sizes of barrels and stuff like that. And then after that, I started cleaning up the line work with adding details and yeah, just making sure that the proportions are right. And I added some ornaments, but in the end, I took that out because I think it just started to become too fantasy for the world that I wanted to be.
I see.
But I think at the end, well, not at the end, but I think it could use just a bit of engravings on like the side of the gun.
Right.
Just again, some more visual interest during the first-person animation or first-person view.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see or be the judges of that when we get to the final image. Just
and as you can see,
just backtracking a bit, is that when you are doing your explorations or refining your designs, one problem that I do encounter is that I find myself repeating similar solutions after a while. And I was wondering if you can talk through some methods that you use to break that, break that monotony or perhaps that barrier to come up with a different solution or fresher design.
One of the methods that I used last week actually was taking the silhouette, not silhouette, but taking photos and then extracting pieces from the photos and then warping it or duplicating and then just messing around with that piece of the image and then making cool silhouettes out of it just to get inspirations. So it's not like when you're used to drawing certain shapes, you just keep repeating that shape, right?
No, that's
so
what I
one
find.
way, yeah, exactly. So I find that if I use photos and then break that photo and then like maybe even bashing your own pieces, right?
Yeah.
Just combining your pieces of your drawing, it could create more interesting silhouettes and design ideas for your pieces.
Yeah, I agree
And
with
then
that. I think it's important just to break that the habits and tendencies that you have by just trying something new.
Definitely. And I continued on to a 3D blockout of the gun because I want to be able to get multiple angles of the exact model in space. So what better way to do it than doing it in 3D, right? So I just made a quick model of it. Yeah, because I want to show the first-person camera, the gun from the first-person camera, and also the side view as well. So instead of drawing the gun twice and it might not be accurate, it's better if I just make a quick 3D model of it and then render it in Keyshot, which will be shown later.
I see.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big advantages that 3D gives, which is the reusability factor. And it allows you to resolve how that object will be in a 3D space, especially if it's for a 3D game. When you're working just for a purely 2D concept or side scroller, you can get away with it even more to a certain extent.
Yeah. And if it's more stylized, then it's even easier to get away with things.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, and Carta mentioned telescopic spear bullets. Yes. So the idea is that the bullets is like a telescope which can expand when shot from the gun. Because
that's really cool.
Yeah, because the barrel, the grenade launcher, the rotating barrel won't hold a long spear, right? So I had to think of a ways that could make the spear fit into the barrel, which one way is the telescopic mechanism.
did you end up designing or doing a breakout of the bullet? Because I think that is a really cool thing just to see.
No, but I will do that after this.
You should, man. It'll be a shame because otherwise people might assume it's a normal
Yep.
gun.
Definitely. And I think it would just make the design sheet more complete.
Mhm.
But yeah, didn't do it this time. And as you can see, I was trying out the first person view.
Ah, awesome.
And then key shot, yeah. And as you can see, I was trying out materials and different HDRIs for the environment to get accurate reflections and stuff. But a lot of them are painted over in the end.
Yeah.
But key shot is really good. Like rendering in 3D is really good to get 80% of the rendering work done for you. And all that's left is just detailing out smaller pieces. And as you can see, I brought the renders back to to Photoshop, and then I stopped for a bit to get a logo going, just so it's more exciting and it looks like a real project.
It is a real project, Ken.
Oh, sorry. Don't fire me, Hatcom.
Yes.
It's a real project.
Sorry.
Oh, and you were asking me how I did the turtle. It's a cutout layer.
I had no idea that you are a man of so many talents, Ken. Concept artist, 3D modeler, and now logo designer as well. Stop taking our jobs, man.
Yeah, I can do everything. It's good.
Yeah, but it's really cool. I mean, all joking aside, that logo I think just makes it feel more immersive. And
Plus
I think,
9% immersion.
yeah. Here's a question actually that I think some people may have when it comes to working in 3D, which is at what point do you actually stop working in 3D or realize that you have enough and move on to 2D? Because some people end up spending too long in 3D, or they have the problem where they realize after going to 2D that they wish that they had done more in 3D.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm still not too sure myself. I think the answer is it depends on the time that you have for the piece. Because if the 3D model for this gun was done so quickly because I didn't really have much time to do it. So a lot of the details, like the beveling on the underside of the body of the gun, that's done on Photoshop instead of the 3D.
Is it an afterthought, or is it just because you thought it would be easier to do in 2D?
Somewhat both. I had it in mind that I don't want the body to be so geometric like that. But it's just, I don't know, like somehow I didn't think of it in 3D, and I just didn't really bother to try and make it more detailed because I don't really have time. But if I have time, then maybe I'll make the 3D model just a bit more defined, so I don't have to do even as much work on Photoshop. But balancing when to stop and when to start doing it in Photoshop is something that I'm still learning myself.
Yeah. Well, as far as it goes, from my personal experience, it is just something that you will learn as you do more pieces in 3D and 2D. And also, sometimes you can surprise yourself, especially with a tighter time limit, where you realize that, okay, I have this much time, I can't take so much time in 3D, so I'll do it in 3D instead. 3D and
2D.
do it in 2D instead. And
Right.
you'll be surprised at how much quicker you can get certain things done, like texturing, for example, and even just something that might take a while to get good geometry in 3D that would take a few seconds in 2D.
Definitely.
And it's just too easy to feel protective of your pristine 3D model. So there's a certain amount of bravery that you need to have and just say, you know what, I just need to get this done. and
Right.
I'll just do it by whatever means necessary, rather than being too precious with it.
I think in the end, it's just a concept, right? Like even if you have to destroy your 3D in 2D in Photoshop, it's fine as long as you get a better design in the end, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just that whole saying of killing your darlings.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, back to what you're doing in the time lapse, Ken.
Yeah, and I was just adding more details like scratches, rust, wear and tear mostly because it adds a lot of character and it's just fun rendering out those scratches.
Yeah.
And because this weapon will be used underwater, I think having a lot of rust would make sense because then it shows that it's been used a lot.
Right, right.
But I should have find some references of gun rusting because of like water damage, and I didn't.
Yeah, might have gotten a bit lazy there, Ken. And Errol also says in
Yeah.
the chat, totally agree with what Jordan just said. And Karta also says, damn, Ken, that side view looking good.
Thanks,
And-
man. And
and
key
yeah,
shot is not
dude.
cheating.
Of course not, Ken.
Yeah, I'm just rendering out the first person view right now. Just adding details. I think with keyshot, it it does 80% of the work for you, or 90% even. So I don't really have to think about like, oh, I should, like, how would the shadow work in this kind of lighting? Like, how would
Yeah.
it work? You know, like most of that work is done for you. You just have to add details, which is something that keyshot can't do well if you're using it for concepts.
Yeah. And I think,
Like there are some ways, but it's not very robust.
yeah. But of course, I think we shouldn't forget the importance of knowing fundamentals and not allowing programs to control the kind of information that you want to communicate. It should just be used as a tool rather than the ends itself. And Latte Milky also says it's called strategy in
Indeed.
regards to the comment about
Yeah.
key shot is cheating or not. And I agree, especially if you're doing concept art. You know, in the end, it is about communicating an idea and doing that within a certain time constraint. So what were you doing there with the glow on the weapons, Ken?
Just added some bloom, so it feels like there's like a strong light to it, and it's done. Oh, I added some background just to get some environment at the end.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's my time lapse. I'll just stop that at the end.
And everyone
Thank you.
clapped. No, it looks great.
Thanks for
Ken.
the meme. Thank you.
I think it turned out really nicely. It was just a bit of a shame with last week's podcast, and I'm sure those of you that were there remembered that Ken's dream cut off for most part, and he had to rush all of his sketches within the last 20 minutes. So I think he really managed to pull it together and come up with an awesome result. And
Thanks, Jordan.
there's X-Trident in the chat that said, yo, and great to have you here, man. And let's read some of the
hello.
comments in the chat as well. I'm gonna move my webcam out of the way since it's blocking the chat. Latte Milky says, watching your time lapse wanted me to do more studies on machine stuff. Well, that's great to hear. And Karta says, Keyshot can actually do animation as well. You just need to do the animation outside Keyshot. I think as FBX format. Yeah, I've seen our art director Ken when we were working in Batavian Studio work with animations, and it was so cool.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot of work to add some
Oh, yeah.
animation.
Yeah, I think we're just a little bit lazy for that. And Burrito also says so cool, and I agree. It's really a cool weapon, Ken.
Thank you. But yeah, I should add the harpoons to this design sheet, so it's just more, what do you call it, more complete.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, if people do not really understand the context of the concept, they might mistake it for a standard rifle of
Yeah.
sorts. All right. So, well, that'll be a tough act to follow, but I will be now presenting my finished piece. Actually, I'll just jump into a quick recap of what I did yesterday. So let's switch here quickly. There we go. Should be fine. So the route that I went for my speedy birding turtle. So I'm not gonna recap everything. Just the direction that I decided to go forward with is I wanted the clan of bounty hunters in my universe to be more fantastical, and I had the idea that there would be more Nordic and Viking influence, and they have witches and shamans in their tribe that can wield ice magic, and they use that to enhance their weapons in order to combat the hot flames of speedy birding turtle. And despite that, their weapons are still a bit more brutish. They're not so sophisticated or focusing on magic projectiles. It's just your standard fantasy weapon. And I tried to bring in some motifs of the killer whales, but I thought that was a little difficult in the end. And some of them turned out to be really comical. And if you watch the previous podcast, I think you guys will know what I mean. And I thought about many different ways that they could combat the speedy burning turtle, which is ice with ice magic. So I thought about the idea of incorporating frost and maybe aurora borealis, just things in general that are associated with ice. So crystals and glaciers. And the equipment that I decided to go forward for the first one that I did is a hammer, since, yeah, I guess it's one of the more logical solutions to smashing the hard shell of a turtle. And these are some of the reference images that I've gathered from that. So some, I've divided them into sections. So first one is just more to do with animal motifs, and then the actual equipment and weapons, so ranging from axes, morning stars, and whatnot, to something that's more organic, referring back to the icy elements that I mentioned before, and some defensive equipment, and just general like patterning. And this was meant to be used for a potion, which I might get around to doing after this podcast, actually, and a cannon, which I don't think I'll be going forward with or putting on the back burner. So, without further ado, I shall be presenting my time lapse. Let me just bring it up. And of course, if any of you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat, just so we can get a good discussion and conversation going on between us. And try
Smokekeeper says he's never seen a plan, never seen plan details like this. Looks amazing.
Well, to be fair, I think it's not, at least from my experience in working in a studio, I don't see too many people approaching designs using a mind map, but I highly suggested Smokekeeper, was it?
Smokekeeper, yes.
Alright, that's an awesome username. But yeah, so it's essentially the whole principle of trying to resolve the designs as early as you can. And I firmly believe that in the same way, a picture can speak 1,000 words. 1,000 words, can speak one picture. And in that, with that in mind, I think it's possible to just quickly jot down some quick notes that will bring together all these awesome imageries in your mind, and just slowly going through them without actually dedicating hours of rough sketching, which might not end up being successful anyway. So if you can get rid of those bad ideas as soon as you can, the better. And we can definitely go into more depth of what a mind map is some other time, but I'll just get the time lapse started. So let me open up VLC, and it should be playing right now, right? No, it's not.
No, not yet.
Okay, just give me a moment, guys. Sorry about that. Are there any more comments in the chat?
No, not yet.
Okay, cool. Give me a moment. I did have it open, but it just didn't show, I suppose.
Smokekeeper said, "Thanks for the info. I will have to give it a try."
Yeah, it'll be really great. Give it a try sometime. There we go. Sorry. No, I've been having a bit of a cold last few days, so if my voice sounds a little bit more nasally than usual, well, you can blame that. But yeah, is it running now? I think it should be.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, it is.
Alright, so this is the rough sketch that I ended up with from the previous stream. And what I decided to do, rather than keeping it at a boring, orthographic view, I decided to tilt it into a 3/4 view. And I did consider going to 3D as well, but I thought that it might take away some of the whimsicality of the shapes or the organic feeling of a hand-drawn image. So I decided to, take the time to do things the right way.
I think, like as we discussed just now, I think a 3D can just be used as much as it's needed. Like you don't have to detail it so much. I think it would just help even if you just add, like model a cylinder and then the handle.
Oh, definitely.
Just so to block out the perspective and the perspective and the shape in 3D form.
Sorry. Ooh.
Wow.
The hammer's so cold that even I'm getting the sneezes over here.
I'm actually feeling hot. Maybe the
Oh.
turtle is nearby.
Oh yeah, dude. Good thing that we've got some weapons to
Some
hunt it down.
weapons.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys also saw earlier, I did draw like basic shapes as a bounding shape that I draw all these more complex ones within, which allows me to get a basic idea of where to put the details. There we go. The frame's back up again. And right now, after I've done a rougher sketch, I go back in and do a thinner line work sketch as well, just to establish the finer details. But I'm not worrying too much about things like texture at this point.
Are you using like an unpressured brush for the line art?
Yeah, I don't actually. It's super slight. If you go to my brush settings, it will say like 50%.
Oh wait, that's my brush.
What? Well, no, I made it by myself.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyways,
Okay.
it's a standard hard brown brush that's been squashed down a little bit. So if any of you want to experiment with that, feel free to create your own brush.
Why did you decide not to use pen pressure? I'm quite curious.
I think it just gives me better control and crisper lines, I suppose. It really depends on my mood, but I wanted this to feel a little bit more like a pen, like an actual like technical pen. And I like that kind of look.
Makes sense.
Whereas if I want to draw something that's a bit more expressive, I would have pen pressure, for example.
So I guess in that way, changing your brush also makes you experiment with like how a piece can feel.
Oh, definitely. And usually I think about what kind of feeling or finish that I want to get before I choose the brushes. So at this stage as well, I'm just adding in the finer details and going beyond just the third level details, and you can say fourth level, where I'm doing like smaller indents and extrusions, and not only to make it more visually interesting, but to also make it more functional, where I'm adding rivets and I guess metal supports just to make the weapon feel a lot sturdier. And after doing that, I begin to outline it with a thicker version of the brush, and just doing it over the material groups. So I already have a basic idea from the rough sketch that I've done, what materials that I want, and rather than outlining everything, I'm selectively doing it so that it delineates one material group from another.
I think this is also a technique that you explained a little bit in episode 4, right? When you were doing the Survivor Merchant.
Yeah, I used exactly the same one, and that was actually a breakthrough for me. Oh, and Ken, if there's anything in the comments, can you help me just read them out, just so that I don't have to alt tab too much as well.
Oh, okay. X Trident said, oh, sorry. Latte Milky says, I tried Jordan's insight about approaching design for my product design project. It does help in jotting ideas down.
Mm. Oh, that's great to hear.
And then X Trident said, mind map is also helpful to show the thought process to your colleagues in work environment.
That is very true, and I see some bless yous in the chat, so yeah, I appreciate that.
I've actually never
for a while. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. I've actually never had to give my mind maps to my colleagues.
Yes. Well, sometimes I do. I try and talk with my art lead. Depends.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the team, of course. Some people would prefer to see it visually, but more artistic people, inclined people, generally are finer with mind maps. Whereas I find maybe with the clients, sometimes they really want to see a finished product.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So.
then Carda says, no, it's my brush. And then Mangami, those lines, really neat and pleasing to see.
Thanks a lot, Mangami, and good to see you in the chat as well. Although, to be fair, they're quite rough if you do zoom in, but I've kind of embraced my rough lines as a characteristic of my line work as well, just to give that handmade feel. Whereas I know that there's some people that have the steadiest hands. And it just so happens that when I was doing the line work for this piece, I've just done quite a difficult workout for my forearms on that day. So I couldn't grip my stylus properly, and I just couldn't really draw a straight line, and a lot of it was quite shaky. So I'm like, you know
what they say?
What?
No, you know what they say about the
What?
quality of a line work? It shows how the person is. So your line work is wiggly and rough.
Yeah, I'm very weak-willed and shaky, collapsing in the face of pressure. It's very true.
Alright.
At this stage, oh sorry, go on, Ken.
More comments. Oh, actually, let's finish it. I think it's almost done, right? Or
No, we're less than halfway, but I think we're on
Okay,
schedule,
never mind.
so don't worry about it. But yeah,
Okay,
right at this stage, I'm just working on, coloring it in. So nothing too special. Although I'm just cleaning up the masks right now, so that it doesn't bleed past the line work. And the way that I've tackled.
Sorry, will this be a good time to read more comments, or do you wanna?
Let me just explain a bit more about the coloring technique.
Go ahead.
The way that I've done it is that I've actually created a curves adjustment layer on top where I can adjust the values and also individual color channels, so I can have more control over the results of the colors that I have, and I just mask it out. So if you look at my layers, you'll notice that I have a few curves layers with some masks, and I try to layer my lighting that way. So my speculars, my shadows, and sometimes ambient occlusion as well. And this allows me to do it non-destructively, just in case I'm doing a different piece and the client wants me to do a different lighting scenario, or perhaps a different color scheme as well. It just makes it very friendly towards the process of iteration.
And this is also a technique that TCK showed during his episode.
Yeah, there's lots of different variants as well. There's like the dice condo technique where they use something similar but with different layer adjustments. But this specific one I learned from my very good friend Morton, and it's been a life changer for me. So I really appreciate that he has shown it to me.
You'll have to show it to me one.
Yeah,
later.
I think it would be a good idea maybe to do a slower live demo of the painting sometime, because we usually just do a time lapse of it.
Also, you made that crystal look really nice, man. Did you have to do a study of it first, or
no?
Is that something that's
not this time actually? I've been trying to adapt the whole idea of going more by my feelings. So what I mean by that, it's not necessarily some sort of nebulous way where I'm just sitting in the corner of the room and trying to listen to what my heart says. But it's more about just observing the photos and trying to understand what kind of textures that I feel, and I try and make a verbal observation of it. So I noticed that crystals tend to be quite cloudy inside, and as a result, I used a chalk brush and a smudge tool to recreate that, where there's some that are a bit sharper and some that are a little bit blurrier due to, I guess, certain parts of the crystal not letting as much light in, for example, and it being dispersed around.
But you were referencing a photo on the side, or?
Oh, for sure. I mean, just because
okay.
I don't have it on the time lapse doesn't mean that I don't have it. So yeah.
Damn, you just spoiled your you just spoiled the
Oh,
secret,
no.
man.
Not everyone will be able to know my secrets. I'll be out of a job. But no, it's really important, and it's something that definitely should not be skipped or taken for granted. So I'm doing all of this underneath my line work layer as well, and after I've gotten most of the things done with the curves, I usually get back into painting things opaquely, just to try and get things more under my control without having to toggle through so many layers as well.
I'm gonna read some comments.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
go
okay.
ahead.
And Burrito asked, how long did it take you to finish all the line art?
The line work itself didn't take too long. I would say 3 hours, 3 hours. 2 hours actually, 2 hours.
Okay. Oh,
It's
and
just,
you
yeah,
did
with the
something
extra
there.
Oh, right now I'm just making a change based off of feedback that I've gotten from Thomas's girlfriend actually. And it was just the idea that the flat head of the hammer didn't seem quite as functional. And I will have to personally agree on that. And I think having a big pointed, I guess, main head of the hammer just makes it look more formidable and what do you call it? Designed to crack some serious shell, you know.
But somehow I kind of disagree with that. I like the previous design better, and we talked about this outside of the stream.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it feels like the flat hat for me, sorry, not the flat hat, but this design for me kind of doesn't really work, because you know how when you get stabbed by multiple nails, it
Yeah.
won't really hurt, because
Yeah.
I don't know how things just work like that.
Yeah.
So that just makes me think that way. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys in the chat think? Do you actually prefer it with a flat head version or a pointed head version? I'm actually quite curious because I feel like I'm of two minds about it. So just let us know in the chat.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what the chat thinks about
Yeah.
the design.
Yeah, definitely. So do let us know. And
Yeah.
are there any other comments, Ken? Otherwise, I
Yeah.
can continue talking about.
Mangami said those line weight gives a good sense of volume. I think you spent quite a lot of time doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Then-
It just helps me keep track, even though when I'm gonna paint, where my ambient occlusion will be. So it serves a dual purpose, where it makes my line work look more finished, and also as an indicator of where I should place my values later on.
And then X Trident said, too good.
Appreciate it, dude.
Errol said, I think I'm gonna try Jordan's technique to do my personal project, especially for the design call outs.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, just let me know how that goes. Your last illustration for your personal project is really cool, man. So
Yeah.
feel free to just let me know how that goes, and I'll be more than happy to help out as well. Any comment? Oh, at this stage, I'm kind of going into the smaller details where inside crystals, there's usually cracks on the inside, so I'm going in with a sharper brush and then smudging it out and doing all the little cracks, you know, and chinks. Chinks, sorry. And all of the scratches as well, just to make the weapon look a little bit more battle worn, you know.
Okay, we have some results on the chat poll.
Yeah.
Jourdan likes his hammer pointy.
Ooh. So you're that kind of guy, huh?
And then
I'm not judging. I'm not judging.
Batman prefers it pointed. Latte prefers it pointed because she thinks that the bigger one will do a lot of impulse on the shell. Maybe she means impact.
Yeah.
Arrow says maybe, just maybe, one point of the hammer could be flat and the other is pointy.
Oh, that's
so it will
true,
be
actually.
kind of multi-purpose.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Smoke Keeper says, I like the look of the flat, but I do understand why someone would want it pointed, design versus functionality.
Yeah,
Taya likes the flat head a bit more. Burrito likes them both. But this work reminds me of World of Warcraft for some reason.
Well, probably is the fact that I was quite addicted to it a while back and played quite a bit of it during high school. So a lot of my design sense is still influenced by that, or I have a lot to thank for. So at this
And
stage,
then for some, just go ahead. Let's finish it. Yeah.
Not too much left to go, guys. So I'm just adding some visual effects. So if you notice, I've added some frost around the ice spikes as well, just to make it seem like it's really cold and it's emitting some sort of magical energy. And I'm also just using a simple soft brush and just smudging to create the mist around it as well. Kind of like dry ice, the sublimation.
That's so cool.
Okay. Just don't
It's
give
so
up your
cool.
day
It's
job
cool.
of concept artist just yet.
It's really cool though. I like
Thanks,
it.
dude. Yeah,
It really adds that extra layer of character to the weapon.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what kind of things could make like a visual reward for the players to attain this weapon, for example.
Oh, I really like that you also made the ends of the metal frame kind of freezing.
Yeah, the
It's
frost.
nice. It's nice.
Thanks,
Yeah.
dude. And this is the final result as well. So I also put on the Beast Hunter logo on it as well, just to make it look more official.
Really nice.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Awesome job.
Then let's get to the comment section, and we can actually move on to the next part where we'll be giving each other feedback, just to kind of give some people an idea of maybe what other concept artists or even clients might be looking for.
Let me share the file with you. Actually, you have my file.
What file?
The PSD.
Oh, yeah.
Like we can do paint overs of each other's work.
Yeah, sure, dude. Just don't save it over my stuff.
Don't what? Oh yeah.
Don't save it
no,
over.
No.
And I'll just quickly read some of
yes.
the comments as well before we move on to that. So, yeah, even Jourdan also prefers his flat hammer more squarish. He has very
Interesting.
specific preferences, and he knows what he wants. I like that. And Burrito also says, do you secretly work for Blizzard, Jourdan? Oh man, it's definitely been almost like a small dream of mine to work for Blizzard. So if anyone out there from Blizzard is watching, you know where to contact me. And Latte Milky also says, visual balance wise, I do prefer the flat one. Yeah, it's true. It's definitely, it can work either way. It's just to a certain extent which end of the spectrum you want to go for, functionality or visual balance and contrast. But yeah, definitely it's just one of those things where lots of people have different ideas of what would be more suitable.
Yeah. I think it also, I guess, depends on the art director at the end.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, I really do appreciate all the kind words that you all have to say about our designs. We really do appreciate it. Let me just open up Ken's. I don't know where it is actually. It should be in the EP07 folder, right, Ken?
No. You downloaded the file just now on Discord.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, silly me.
Uh-huh.
Wait, one moment. Oh, there we
And
go.
somehow Patman DX says chink.
No, you didn't hear me when I said it. I was actually waiting for a reaction from you, because I was saying that there was chinks in the in the ice crystal to make it look
Oh.
battle worn.
Oh. Wow.
Well, taken out of context, yeah, that would have been a very funny comment, to put it very mildly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we do this one by one?
I think we should do it together so that we can get to the other sections, since we have about 37 minutes left to the podcast. And of course, if
Sure.
any of you have feedback as well, let's discuss it together and see what we can come up with in the end. So there's also some in regards to the piece that I was working on, Ken. And Burrithor says maybe there could be two hammers. One is flat, one is pointy, and everyone is happy. That is true. That's very true. And yeah, even the idea of spikes getting away of a flat hammer, and that the spikes might prevent a clean hit or break off. Yeah, it's definitely all those factors. So to a certain extent, I'm kind of just chalking it off to, it's a fantasy weapon, so maybe the crystal's like extra hard as well, so it's not going to be as fragile.
Yeah, the hammer is extra hard.
Yeah. Alright, let me just move my plate out of the way, and I will also do a paint over of Ken's piece and what I think. We can do it we can just do a quick paint over and then talk things through as we make some more bigger changes.
Okay. I have some initial feedback
Okay, sure.
from the layer management.
I know. No, just forget
I'm
about that.
so confused. There's so many layers.
It's not that bad, guys, I swear. Ken's just being dramatic.
Oh, and I'm not sure I'm not sure about the addition of this noise layer. I don't think it helps much, but
Yeah, sure.
it's for
You can remove.
preferences.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, let's get to the design feedback. I'll
Yes.
actually have to think first because it's such a solid design for me. Other
Just-
than the flat head.
It can
I
always.
still like the flat head.
Yeah. Well, the majority wins, Ken. Most people do prefer the pointy head.
I don't know, man. I don't care what people say. No, I'm just kidding. Just gonna continue from this point instead of going back to the flat. Ooh, actually it looks really nice when you remove the line art.
Yeah, I do try and make sure that it works solid even without the line art. But yeah, I guess it's just I do want to still save some time. Although if I did want to go into a render, it wouldn't be too difficult, So it makes a nice transition. And I firmly believe a strong line work is always a solid foundation for a good painting too, in my personal opinion. And I've also heard a lot from good painters that most, or at least from what I've seen, they're also tend to be good draftsmen as well. So what I'm doing personally right now to Ken's weapon is just adding that underwater rust, and I actually
Oh,
brought up
Your
reference.
your VLC is blocking the
Oh
Photoshop.
shoot! Oh, sorry about that. Rookie
Ho, ho,
mistake.
ho.
Whoa! There we
Ho,
go.
ho. Yeah, I'm just gonna merge the layer. It's too
No!
distracting.
Just save it as something different. I'll save it as something different too.
Let me copy that first. Copy the file.
Yeah, I'll put it in a new one. Render paint over. Alright, so what I'm doing now, unlike what Ken didn't do, is that I actually gathered some reference, and while different kinds of metals react differently to water and rust, things like that, I thought this one visually looks really nice. It's not too noisy because some of the results that I had when I typed in underwater rust metal is a little bit too noisy and just decrepit looking. So I wanted it to still feel like it could function,
Yeah.
And this, of course, does go into the boundaries of, this is quite an old battle-worn weapon. If Ken did want to go for a cleaner version, something that's more used by a group of maybe more sophisticated, but a group of bounty hunters, then, you can always go down the route of making it clean. But I think visually speaking, this does make it more interesting. And I'm trying to deposit the rust textures into the nooks and crannies, which is most of the time where a lot of the water tends to collect, and as a result it will have the most impact on the water, on the metal and materials. So rather than
Where can I get your silhouette from the previous
if you scroll
previous
down,
episode?
oh, silhouette.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
What?
I don't know.
Oh, it's outside. Oh, okay.
I didn't intend for you to open up the PSD itself, so I didn't optimize it.
Yeah. This is some. Yeah, that's what I thought. So one feedback that I have from this is that if you look at the silhouette, I think it works better in terms of proportions. Like if actually, let me ask you: is this a two-handed hammer or one-handed?
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one. Okay, I think in terms of proportions, the not rendered, but like the polished, finished version actually doesn't work as well in terms of the scaling between the handle and the hammerhead.
I see. Yeah.
Like if you look at this, I feel like the final result is too extended. Like it's too long.
Yeah.
Like if you notice.
Yeah. I guess I tried to go down the more beast hunter kind of route, where it's like really non-functional looking in a way, where it's like so imbalanced and all.
But I think the initial silhouette works a bit better, so
Right.
that's what I'm gonna try to do. How do I do this? Why is the layer so badly managed?
Just merge it down, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. I merged it, but there's some layers that are showing through, like the effects and stuff.
Right. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah. And also to address Errol's question as well, he said that, question, if the gun is being frequently used, would it still get some rust? Assuming the user
No.
definitely cleans the gun after use. Yeah, it really wouldn't. So like I said, I'm kind of just doing it more for the aesthetic purposes rather than something that I suppose is more realistic. So I'm trying to control it a bit too. And this just makes the group of bounty hunters feel a bit more gritty rather than, something a more maybe well-sponsored group, I suppose, where they have more funds. And in this
That's
case,
also. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say that one thing I'm doing right now is that I think that this line that you previously had, Ken, is just creating a tangent of sorts with this barrel, and also it just feels like if it continues from the back of the weapon up to the front at the tip of the barrel, I think it just makes the flow feel quite boring. So I decided to just tilt this up and put it here. And I think visually from the top as well, if let's just say I remove this, it can look like this. I think it does make it look a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, good point. Also to address Errol's question, what I had in mind is that it definitely wouldn't rust as much, but I just added it for like I said, extra layer of character to the gun, and I just think it would be more interesting to show that the gun has been used and it's not used by someone that's not. It's used by someone who's more greedy. Like they don't really care if they use this gun. Like if they don't care if they have to maintain this gun, they just use it to hunt. So it's not like they would care how clean it is, or if they would clean it every time they hunt.
Yeah. So
It's just for entertainment purposes.
Mm-hmm. So it really depends. If you do want to make it feel like clean and they're a bit more maybe well-funded group, somewhat more organized, you can have that reflect. And with the rust and the wear and tear, I think we want to make them feel a bit more like roughshod, just ragtag bunch of group. So maybe they illegally acquired these weapons somehow. So one thing, Ken, that I think you can do is actually put in an iron, I don't know what you would call it, but I think it could, yeah, where it could actually be a bit more interesting, where the player can flip it up. And I'm not sure if I got the proper reference and if this is how it really works. But let's just say for the general idea alone that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, but a lot of the what do you call it? The spear guns, harpoon guns, they don't have an iron sight because they just shoot it, and it doesn't really travel as far as a normal gun, right? So it's more of a close to medium range type of weapon instead of a long range weapon.
I see. All right.
So that's a bit of the conflict that I had there.
Yeah, I see. No, that's a good point. And I would say also, Ken, that the blade here just feels useless. I will say it's just too short to really do anything.
It's an extra flare. It's not really used as a blade. It's just an extra character.
Yeah. I don't know, if you were to really have it, I think it could look better like that, for example.
Like a bayonet, right?
Sort of, but at the same time, would you really use it as one though? I just feel like it's not exactly too useful in the grand scheme of things, so I might just remove it myself.
Yeah, might just remove it.
And I think if going back to what you were saying as well, when it comes to what do you call it, the motif of a tiger shark, you can always bring that back in somehow. Let me type it up, tiger shark. And Karta also says in the chat as well, add a brand on Ken's gun, Joe. Darmadi Systems. That would be funny, actually. So I think
some feedback for your piece.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that the silhouette here works better, and I was thinking about it, and one of the major reasons is that the framing, not framing, but the frame that holds the crystal on the sides is not evenly proportioned compared to the final result that you had.
I see.
Like if you notice,
right.
Shit. Oh no, I merged it.
Oh.
I'll just bring it back.
Right. So you're making the framing much thicker then.
Yes. Okay. I think you can see it now. See how everything is equally sized, and that makes it just not as interesting.
Yeah, you're right about that actually. Right, that slipped my mind actually.
So if we just add a bit of thickness, would
I
help a
failed.
lot with.
I failed.
Now, Blizzard is just a fleeting dream for you, Jourdan.
No, I'll never get hired now, Ken. Why did you have to give me that feedback?
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point actually. It's something that I should have resolved in the orthographic view first, actually.
Should have used 3D, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is actually where 3D would come in handy, because I probably would have made all these changes more easily. And one thing I actually did, Ken, is that I took this skin of the tiger shark and I just put a soft light over it and it looks already looking like a tiger shark.
That's so smart.
High IQ thinking, my friend. All
Damn.
those years of watching.
How much is the DLC?
Yeah. This is the epic skin which you probably have to pay money for.
Damn.
So you can always just maybe add in some like different colors where oxidized metal often has different colors. So maybe it's the way that you get that kind of coloring is through tempering the metal in a certain way. So yeah, maybe that's something you can do. And I also just made the whole, I guess the place where the grip is, just to make it feel functionally more solid, and just to add some shape variety, because most of the parts that you have are very flowy. Whereas this one, I think introducing some sort of squarish element here and a harder angle just gives some shape contrast. Because a lot of it's angular and flowy. So if we add something here, similar to what you've done here, wait, no, actually not here, sorry. If you add like a straight line instead of an angle, it just adds that contrast. So you kind of have that repeating throughout certain elements of the weapon. Especially considering this is a focal point of some sorts.
Let's see, what else? Okay. I think if I have to draw how a person will handle this thing.
And I'm also just adding some scratches, some chinks. There we go. And I'll take Karta's suggestion and put in Darmadi systems, and I'll rasterize it. So this might seem a bit like a joke, but I actually do think that adding sometimes branding can just give the impression that something is manufactured and actually functional, or at least more grounded in the real world. So maybe I'll just make it smaller so it's not so intrusive.
Will this hammer be used underwater or outside?
No, outside. So after they somehow get the turtle outside, they're gonna smash the crap out of it. The living shell out of it. Crickets.
No, I was just thinking about the design. One of the other point that I was thinking is, it's like, how would a person handle this weapon? Like, where would they hold the hammer?
That's true.
Because I feel like the handle is too big. The radius of the handle is too big for a person to hold, unless they have giant hands.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that could work actually.
So maybe, just maybe,
no, you're right. I think just adding some transition points here as well, just to add a bit more noise density. And Burrito also says, I'd kill for having that gun if you could add some neon lights. That'll probably be for the legendary version of the weapon.
that's another DLC. The RGB DLC.
Nice though, Ken. I think the weapon is definitely feeling a lot more solid, just more functional. Although I would personally, if I was to increase the width of the things that are holding the spikes, I'd probably just move it apart from the middle as well, so it's a little bit more to the side, since the width between the bands of metal are kind of like equidistant right now.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of giving feedback on your feedback.
But as you can see, once I elongated the handle, it looks more like a two-handed hammer that has a lot of weight to it.
I'll be honest, I don't think I was really thinking about that, so I think that you bring in a good point there, Ken. And I'm also adding some smaller negative shapes, Ken, because you don't have much of it going on, which makes it feel a bit, to a certain extent, toy-like. So adding just indentations here, or not indentation, negative shapes here, just makes it feel a bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the most difficult part of this design. It's balancing between making it look too much like a gun and making it look more like a harpoon gun.
Yeah.
Because if I started to add those kinds of details, it might feel like it's like a firearm instead of a harpoon gun, you know?
Yeah, I suppose so.
So
But
I'm not sure.
That's true. I think it is a bit challenging to say the least. But I think you kind of going for that barrel, you can still justify that a hybridization of it is still something you can try out. And just for Burrithor, I'm going to make it a neon version as well. Neon lights on it as well.
It's not sci-fi.
It is now. The cyber burning, speedy burning turtle is actually a mech.
It's a mech.
There we go. And I'm gonna add a bit of a glow as well.
Don't really like that.
What, you like the neon glow?
Huh? No. I'm just talking to myself about the design on your hammer.
Ken, Carta also said add mech legs.
Oh, like Borderlands? The new Borderlands trailer?
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. Are you excited for that, Ken?
Not really. I actually like the first game, but not the second one for some reason.
I see. I have never played a single Borderlands, so I can't really say. Forgive me, Carta, for these terrible mech legs.
Wow.
That's awesome. But yeah, in essence though, I mean, jokes aside as well, I would say that I think to summarize my feedback, it's adding in a bit more of that shark motif and interest through flow and shape variations by doing things such as negative shapes and shape contrast. And also, yeah, just adding a bit more wear and tear can. So what I can do right now is just quickly turn the feedback layers on and off so we can just see before and after. So I didn't do too much actually, like in terms of the silhouette, but I think it's those little touches that just push a weapon or design to feel a bit more believable.
Yeah. I like that you moved the black line. What do you call that? Like move it up a bit, so there's just a bit more visual interest in the first person view. Yeah.
So what's the summary of the feedback that you have for me, Ken?
I think it's just be more mindful of the proportions, especially because it's a stylized weapon.
Yeah.
I think proportion is really important in
Yeah.
this case, and just I think the biggest change that I made is the handle, and the rest is just minor changes because the design itself is already pretty solid, so there's not much to give feedback on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the handle and like the frame of the crystal that holds them in place, that could
Yeah.
use a bit more adjustments in terms of proportions.
Yeah.
And
think-
I'm also sorry, one more. I'm also not sure about the top. Where's the layer? Damn it. This one. I'm not sure about this portion here. I feel like it works on the side view, but somehow doesn't really work on the final render.
I think it's because I made it too tall.
What do you mean?
If you look at the orthographic view, it's only a slight bit taller, but it sticks out a lot more in the 3/4 view, and it's less bulbous.
Maybe. That's I think that's what I was doing. Like just make it
Yeah.
stand out less.
Mm-hmm.
I think that works a bit better
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah, I
making
guess
it
so.
bulbous like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think I can change that and the handle, but just for the sake of wrapping the piece up, I'll just take into consideration the proportions about future designs moving forward. All right. that
Okay,
sounds
let me show the before and after. It's not much.
good. Burrito also says add neons as well.
And nah, we should move on.
Yeah. Well, that does wrap up the feedback that we have for each other as well, guys. And we will be moving on to a quick Q&A session if anyone has any comments. Otherwise, we'll just be going forward with the artwork of the week section. I think most of the comments are either about adding legs or neon lights to the design.
Gonna add some neon lights to the crevices of the handle. Wow.
Add legs with neons. Galaxy brain.
Anyway,
Alright.
let's
So,
move on.
there is one question with
Well,
from
the next
Latte.
session is a Q&A, so we should answer
Mhm.
lattes. How do you guys balance between clarity and pushing the design? A question by Latte Milky. I find it's hard if the design has clarity when I'm pushing ideas.
It's fine. I don't think those two things are necessarily like, opposite ends, or at least just because you clarify a design that, or you push a design, you lose clarity or things like that. I think it's just a matter of pushing the design to the point that all of the checklists that you have to make a functional and a clearly communicating design has been met. I think the way that clarity is reduced is when you add in too many extra details or design elements that only distract from the main purpose of the design. So as long as you have met the basic requirements, I would just say it's a matter of probably adjusting the shapes to make it even clearer, or maybe even go as far as trying to take away certain elements and try and see if it still communicates the function or the purpose of the design after doing so. I mean, it's definitely more of a vague answer, not something that is that can be easily understood maybe outside of a proper context, but hopefully that helps. What do you think, Ken?
I think. I'm still thinking about the question itself. Clarity and pushing the design. Okay, maybe what you said. Okay. So what you said about ticking the check boxes first is definitely very important, because as a designer, your job is to solve a design problem visually, and it's always important to ask, like, what is the design for? What are the requirements? What are the specifications and the brief itself, right? And if, for example, your design checks all of the boxes and it meets all of the requirements of the brief, then it's good. But if you want to push it even further, then you just have to make sure that it still checks all those boxes, and you don't add unnecessary ideas that detracts from the main focus of the design. So
just to add on, Ken, and I often find that clarity is a matter of taking away. You don't
definitely.
It comes to a point where clarity isn't achieved by further pushing or adding, but it is achieved through taking away.
I think clarity and good design comes from having a clear focus of what the design is for. And I was gonna say something. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and the design is clear. Like, what is the purpose of that design? So you can only do that by taking away unnecessary details, right? So if you're pushing ideas, then you don't push the idea by adding details, but push it in a way such that, how can I make this more interesting but still have a laser focus on getting those boxes checked, the requirements checked, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I think it's a bit of a vague answer, but I think it comes with experience.
And it is a difficult question, and as I mentioned before, unless there's a specific example, it's difficult. So in the case of like the paint over I did for Ken, I tried to make the design clearer because Ken did specify he wanted it to be influenced by a tiger shark. And so I tried to bring in other motifs. And he mentioned that it's being used extensively underwater. So I did try and bring in some rust to hint at that. And there's other things that I've done just for the idea of making it more visually interesting. So it's more about, dealing with aesthetics, with shape variety, negative shapes, and shape contrast. And that's just as a matter of, I guess it's more like the cherry on top, I suppose. So hopefully that answers the question.
As long as the main idea is solid, then anything minor that you add only adds flavor to it instead of destroying the idea.
Yeah, definitely. So in the end, I guess to summarize, it is clarity comes from simplicity and minimalism, and just communicate enough that the design is understood. All right, and I don't think we have any other questions, so let's move on to the artwork of the week section. So that is a section that we do during every podcast where we showcase some of the artwork that have left an impression of us throughout the week. Not of us, on us throughout the week. Yes, so Ken, I would like you to start first.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so this one is a piece by Si Chen. I think that's how you pronounce it, but I'm not sure.
But Chinese, Ken, you should know.
I can't, man. It's been a while.
What kind of Chinese are you? You disgrace your ancestors.
I'm fake. Uh, anyway, what I really like about this piece is just the colors and how abstract it is. And if you look at the details, there's just no details at all in different sections of the painting, but you can still make out what's going on because like the big shapes and silhouettes are very clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can admire that. It's something I find so difficult to do in my own work.
Yeah, it's something that I really want to strive for. Is I think that goes back to Latte's question about clarity and what we said about removing stuff.
Yeah.
And this picture is very clear, even though a lot of the details have been removed. It's because the big picture is already solid in itself. And the details are just the cherry on top. And it's definitely something that I really want to strive in my own work. It's just getting these like rougher, more artistic brushstrokes instead of these really clear cut like 3D photos and all that techniques. I think there's always a special place in my heart about these kind of images where it's more loose and just more artistic in general.
Yeah, definitely something that I need to work on myself too.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my art of the week. It's called Game Design by Sui Cheng. It's only one. And you can follow him on ArtStation at xxcheng.
Awesome. All right, I'll be moving on to mine then. So I have two today. And I'm just going to open them up right now. Let's see. All right, so the first one that I would like to showcase is Amelia, the Hextech Conductor by Nicholas Oy. And I think some of you might have even seen this on Facebook since it's been shared around quite a bit. And it's like actually someone that we know and one of our friends. And this is a piece that he's done for his final project, if I'm not wrong, at Brainstorm. And I'm just very impressed to see how far he has come. And the idea behind this piece is what I really liked. Just the idea of having like an origami, what do you call it, origami mancer of sorts. So this might not be so apparent in the design, but he has other accompanying pieces as well which show her abilities and how Nick has come to arrive at this design. And he actually folded real origami and did some scribbles on it, and even for the hair. I didn't notice it at first, but he did actually create a mock-up where he used paper curls in order to design the hair, and I thought that is such a creative way to go about designing, and as a result I think he's just come up with a design that's very unique and very fun to look at, really, and I think it just shows through. And I have one more piece as well, actually, from someone that is or was in the chat before, which is the piece Mask by Fahmi Fauzi. And I'm just...
It's not in the chat anymore.
Ah, right, that's fine. Well, I'd just like to say that I'm just constantly impressed by how much he keeps on improving with every piece that he comes up with. And
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and there's this meme that's been going around of the improvement meme, and just seeing how much he's improved in the last few years to get to where he is now is amazing.
He improved really fast, man. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, I'll link to the post on the chat. If you look at the improvement, it's crazy from 2014 to 2019. It's like
yeah,
he improved so much. It's unbelievable.
Definitely. And I think that shouldn't be a discouragement, but an encouragement for people that are in the chat that are starting off, that it is possible through consistent hard work. And of course, not forgetting just the own merits that this piece has. I think, I think Fami has a really nice design sense when it comes to drawing female characters, which mixes some oriental influences with many others as well. And there's just some sort of elegance and mysteriousness to this piece that I really like. And his choice of colors are on point as always. And you can follow him on his ArtStation and Instagram at Mangami. And for Nick, you can find him on ArtStation at Nicoe Design and Nick Wee on Instagram. So yes, that wraps up the artwork of the week session. And actually, that wraps up the whole podcast. It's been 1.5 hours already since the start.
Oh damn! It's been 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And Smoked Kipper said, "I need to leave DA."
It's not too bad. I mean, apparently, like the art, it's getting a revamp soon. Like I've seen some of the people beta testing like the new layout. It looks cool, but yeah, it's definitely got questionable content on it. So if you do want to venture more into the professional, I guess, side of things, I would say ArtStation is still a great place to go to. And who's to say that you can't do both? It's really up to you, man.
I think both works. It just depends on what kind of artwork you want to look for.
Yeah, definitely. Alright, so we are finally at the end of the episode. And thank you so much for joining us today, guys. And it's been a lot of fun just chatting with you all and reading the comments that you all had. It just makes it so much more enjoyable to do the podcast. Oh, definitely, Karta. Time flies when we talk about guns with legs. And thank you for joining us as well, Smoke Kipper. We really appreciate it. And Ken, if you could show as well the links to the Drawing Table social media. You can follow us.
I'm way ahead of you.
Oh, sorry, dude. I haven't seen the screen. But follow us on Instagram and Facebook for updates on upcoming content, and on YouTube to watch our previous episodes, and of course on Twitch to catch future episodes live. We also would like to unveil a community group for the podcast, which we can join right here. So the idea behind it is that people will be able to post their entries for future design jams or perhaps for other content in the future without having to do it through instant messaging or emails. Yeah, which is a little bit finicky.
Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you for the newcomers to the show and also to the viewers that has been here since the previous episodes.
Yeah. So
thanks very much for
like
watching this episode.
Kea and Karta and Burrito, it's really great to have you on the stream, as always.
Awesome. Okay. We'll see you guys on the next podcast then.
All right.
Or
Thanks
on the
again,
next
everyone.
table.
Yes. We'll have lots of new content in the future, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you at the next drawing table. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. See you guys.